listening to Evergreen Media Network. I am Cindy Schwartz, and this is the Patient Partner Show. We're also a podcast on Spreaker, so look us up there. We have Helene Epstein again on the show because, Helene, you have done this for so many years, and sadly, because of so many instances that it has happened to you and family members, this medical harm. It's just atrocious. That's not even a strong enough word. And Jeannie Roller, my co-host, and I got involved with this because it did happen to us. So just so the listeners know that. I want to preface this show, Helene. We decided to talk about how a patient is being dismissed by the doctor. And that is a big deal. And I want to just talk a little bit about how it happened to me. That is one of the big things that did happen to me in my scenario. And it was if I didn't have any input, even though the diagnosis I was getting was a serious diagnosis. I didn't doubt the diagnosis at all. I mean, I was convinced with the testing and stuff that they had done on me that this was probably what it was. But I found that the medical community would say, go ahead and ask as many questions as you want, ask whatever you want, blah, 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 blah. And then when I did that, I had gone to these appointments by myself because at the time I couldn't get any really close friend or family member that I wanted to be involved in my diagnosis to go to these appointments with me. So that's a big no-no. I just want everyone to know that. Don't go to these appointments by yourself. Go with somebody that you trust, you know, that you want to have your information in their knowledge as well, too. That was one of the things. I mean, I could have grabbed some friends to go, but they weren't the people I wanted to go with. So I went to the appointment, the one major one by myself, and that's what I found. It was very condescending. It was as if I didn't even exist. They had the paperwork ready. This is a routine for us. Lady, we do this all the time. I'm so-and-so. I'm schooled at MD Anderson. I'm schooled at, the best hospitals that you can get. I know what I'm doing. So, you're just put yourself in my care and that's it. And I was like, but I have questions. I'm concerned. I'm anxious. I'm blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, I'm already dismissed. Well, in that dismissal, I had said these serious drugs, and it was written on paperwork that I was allergic to them, which I got the drugs anyway. And it took me a couple of years to even get myself back straight from that. And I'm like, wow, maybe if they would have actually heard me saying that again in this appointment, in this most serious appointment, that it would have stuck in somebody's mind to read some kind of a chart. So we did the other podcast about, things that get missed and turning anger into action. And you were saying, Helene, really good points. Maybe it was communication. Maybe it was this. Maybe it was cognitive, blah, 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 blah. This is a simple thing. This was definitely communication. It was the lack thereof because I was dismissed as a patient because this doctor was, not world trained, but, very, very well trained. And he had this down to a science. So I'm open to listen to what you're saying, Helene, on what people can do to not feel or not be dismissed by their medical providers.
Well, first of all, I'm very moved by your story about what happened to you with the medication error, because one of the things we trust the doctor to do is not prescribe the medication that's at the top of your jacket and that is listed as something you're allergic to or have had a terrible reaction to in the past. So this is medical error at its most basic. And I know that for me personally, this is not about dismissal, but whenever I am given a new medication, I do not allow them to order it. I first check it out.
Yeah.
And I check it out with the other medications I'm taking, because sometimes it's not that you're allergic to a specific medicine. It's that you are is contraindicated with your other medications.
Yeah.
Like if you're taking X, you can't take Y. So I think that that's a very important thing for all patients to do and realize that you have the right to say, thank you for giving me the information about the medication. Write it down for me. And if I agree, then I will call you and say, yes, please order this medication. Check it out first. Protect yourself. And then the other thing about being dismissed, if you are a woman, if you are a person of color, if you are elderly, if you are disabled, I hate to say this, but if you are visibly overweight, your level of dismissal goes up. And we all know that feeling when we're trying to communicate what's important to us and we're not being heard. And it's so frustrating. So one of the things that I do want people to understand is that we know from a very well-received research paper from 2018 that on average, a doctor interrupts the patient at 11 seconds. You have 11 seconds to talk on average before the doctor says, oh, I know what you're doing. I know what you need. Mm-hmm. Or you find that they're walking out of the office and they have their hand on the doorknob and they say, do you have any questions? And I will always say, excuse me, step back into the room because I have 4 questions or I have 3 questions. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take more time than you standing in the doorway is going to help.
I want to interject this real quick on that note as far as do you have more questions? Because this is what happened to me. And I said, yes. The doctor was sitting there and I said, yes, I do have several questions. I started to ask him and he's like, that's already been taken care of. So in other words.
That's pure dismissal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a lot of my focus is about diagnosis and not treatment. But a lot of these rules apply to both. So if you're going there and you're telling them your list of symptoms and you feel like you're not being heard, the most important question after what might this be is to say, what else could this be? To try and get them to stop and open up their what's known as the diagnostic differential, their list of possible diseases or medical conditions, and you want them to rule out first anything that could kill you. Anything that is urgent in terms of timing.
Okay.
But once you feel that you're getting that good conversation, if the doctor is dismissing you, if they're saying, oh, this is just stress, or it's all in your head, or you just need to relax more, or you need to lose weight, you can say, what do I do if these symptoms get worse? You want to ask the doctor questions that make them stop and consider the options.
Okay.
Finding a medical practice you can trust is difficult, but essential. We know that all healthcare professionals are under severe time constraints, but they still should be listening to your reasonable concerns and goals. So if your doctor or your nurse practitioner or your physician's assistant is consistently ignoring what you have to say, even if your symptoms are getting worse, it's time to find another primary care practice or another specialist.
Yeah.
For people in rural areas or areas where access to healthcare is difficult, that's a really hard thing to say.
Yes.
So one thing you can do is if you have insurance, you can reach out to your insurance company. Many of them offer a free second opinion option on their website where they will have you upload whatever medical records you have so that they can be reviewed by somebody. Because the insurance companies are also not that interested in paying for you to go to doctor after doctor after doctor searching for an answer.
Right.
Also, another thing, if your doctor is not taking your symptoms seriously, you can say, can I have a referral to a specialist? So if you're having chest pain, ask for a referral to a cardiologist. You're having stomach pain, a gastroenterologist. You can ask for a referral to a specialist because sometimes a fresh set of eyes can be extremely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
The communication part's really interesting. Knowing that we have 11 seconds, that if we don't sound serious and concerned, we can be dismissed very, very quickly. So one thing I work with patients on is reviewing how to present your symptoms factually, clearly, quickly, and without unnecessary details.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We have like 10 seconds left.
Okay. Sometimes the symptoms aren't ignored by the doctor. They're just lost in a list that's too long.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That is totally a good point. So, Helene Epstein, we are talking about dismissed by doctors. You've gave some really good clues, insights on what we can do to slow this process down, because that's another thing is the time constraint. 11 seconds isn't very long to know what you can do for the rest of your life to save your life. On that note, stay listening to Evergreen Media Network.